It looks like Rolf.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm so sorry I can't join in person, but a lot of stuff going on. Sorry.
No worries.
It's nice to have company on virtual.
Hopefully we hear audio from the room.
I heard Kevin. It was real clear.
Oh, okay, good.
This is a test. This is Corey. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We're just talking about whether we could re-aim the cameras because there's some of us here, but you can't see us in the video.
Probably left over from Tuesday night.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Hey guys, this is Bob. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
I can
great.
hear it. Yeah.
I'm driving, so I'm not. You won't see me on video, but I'm heading to Memorial.
Oh. Are you okay?
Memorial Hall. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
I should have been more clear.
I just thought you were so dedicated on the way to the hospital and
Yeah. No, coming into town.
Okay.
How are you doing? Oh, good. Or what you been up to? Yeah, there's a big one just the other night that I had on my calendar and I saw it as it ended. I was like, oh man, I wanted to go to that. Yeah, it was Tuesday. Yeah, Giving Tuesday. How'd that turn out? Good. Oh, really? Man, I thought for sure the free beer would have brought more people in. Yeah. I saw it on the flyer. Yeah, right.
Joy, can you still hear me? It's Bob.
Yes, I can still hear you, Bob.
Okay, so we're waiting? Is that what's
I'm
going on?
waiting, something for a camera, Corey, you
Okay.
said.
Cool.
I was getting worried too, because I was thinking, uh-oh.
Okay, gotcha.
I haven't heard Bill yet, but I assume he's there. Bob, when do you start basketball again refereeing?
Let me just repeat that for the record. This is the Mobility and Parking Board meeting. It's our regular meeting. It's on November 30th, 2022. And first, I call the meeting to order, and let's go around and introduce ourselves, starting with online folks. Joy,
Oh, I'm Joy Porter.
who's next?
Bob
Carl
Bodor,
Stang.
resident.
Okay, Carl,
Sorry, Bob. Carl Stang.
who we got?
Rolf Jacobson is here too.
Ralph, and who do we have in the upper right-hand corner?
Natalie Johnson.
Hey,
Hey.
introduce yourself, Corey.
And I think so we've got members Bob, Rolf, and Carl, and Joy online, and our council liaison Natalie. And I'm Corey Satella. I'm the vice chair of the MAP.
Hello, Luke Prince, board member.
And Bill Kerner, board member. And we're,
Roy Cheney, Deputy City Administrator.
okay. Hey, we're all here. And Kevin, introduce yourself.
Kevin Stevenson, Mobility and Parking Manager.
Okay, thank you. First item of business is to approve the agenda for the meeting. Anybody have any comments or thoughts on the agenda? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I motion to approve the agenda.
I could second that. I had sent some suggestions for some updates with the agenda earlier today, and I thought maybe those would be considered. Do you
Well,
want me to bring those up now, or?
yeah, I think what we're gonna do, Corey, if it's okay with everybody, is as part of the reports we're getting from both Kevin and our esteemed Assistant City Administrator, Roy, will handle those just as part of the normal business as published.
Okay. Then I would second the motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, we have anybody opposed? No oppositions. The agenda is approved. Next item of business is approval of minutes.
Hey, Bill.
Yes, Roy.
Bob may need to state it since we can't see him.
Yeah, Bob did email me. Thank you, Roy. Bob emailed me and said, I guess all of us, that he has a basketball game. He will be late to the meeting. So
Guys, I'll be there in 5 minutes.
you will. Hey, that's great. Okay.
Hey, Bob, did you approve the agenda?
I did. I'm sorry.
We have to hear
Yes,
you. Okay, thank you.
I was muted. Sorry.
Okay, next item of business, approval of minutes from October 26th, 2022. Any comments on the minutes of that meeting?
Mr. Chair, do I remember that we did talk a bit about the PPACG transportation study at the last meeting?
We
and made
did.
a request.
We did talk about it.
So I wonder if we
Yes.
could update the minutes to record that Therefore, that's why we have the update that was provided in the packet today.
Right. That's a good comment, Corey.
I can't remember when that was brought up, but I suspect it was either under new business or board correspondence.
I think you brought it up, didn't you, Roy?
Maybe I brought it up. I can't, but it wasn't listed on there. It needs to
We
be.
did have some.
So it must be
discussion
new
on it.
business maybe? Or was it during the correspondence?
I think it came up in the correspondence.
I do
And
too.
then we finally got the report, so it's in your deputy city administrator portion.
Yeah,
for
okay.
tonight.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
So the modification is to amend the minutes to show that during board correspondence, there was a question about the PPACG transportation study. And as a result, we're getting a response on that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey.
That was my only change to the minutes.
Okay. Next item is public comment on non-agenda items. Oh, yeah, we got to pass the minutes.
So
I-
I'll make a
I need
motion. I'll make a motion to
approve the
accept
minutes.
the October meeting minutes,
Okay.
subject to the revision I just mentioned.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
And also comment that the minutes look great. We talked about shortening them. So thanks to the minutes. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. I
Yeah,
think it's
thanks for that
a lot
adjustment.
more efficient in terms of moving the meetings along, and it does convey what happened, the conclusions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Kevin. He took care of that and did a good job. Appreciate it.
Kevin did that. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay. So public comment on non-agenda items. I don't think we have any public here. Oh, we do have a public. Sir? Would you like to introduce yourself? And if you have a public comment, offer it at this time. You what? You are? Could you introduce yourself? Okay, thank you.
Bill, can we have them come to the
Do we have
mic?
anybody online?
We see we've got
Oh,
Mike.
Mike Graham.
Mike Graham is online and he's
Mike
being
Graham.
invited to speak.
Yeah, Mike, are you able to
Let me,
speak to
can
us?
you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you
Oh,
now.
good. Okay, well, I was muted, I guess, there. But yeah, I'm just sitting here listening in because I think all of us at the Metro Board were invited to come to one of your meetings at our last meeting. So I thought I'd take a look and see what you guys are doing now. Haven't been to one of your meetings for probably 4 or 5 years. And I think Shimmy's going to be joining us too as soon as he can. I had a little trouble joining from the website because the link doesn't seem to work. But I was able to get a link from Rolf, so I passed that on to Shimmy now. So I think you'll have about 3 of us here at least from the Metro Board. But I just want to say hello, and I'm going to be listening in, but I don't really have anything else to state at the moment.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here.
And-
We rarely get public at these meetings, so we appreciate that. And
Well, we were
propose to
invited.
have a dialogue. And if you'd like to say anything now, please go right ahead. Okay, not hearing anything, we'll move ahead with the agenda.
You bet.
Next item is a presentation on the map board meeting time change. And Kevin, you want to lead this off?
Yes, so it was brought to all the department heads' attention that have boards that maybe we need to look at a time change. And Roy, you oversee a couple other department heads that have boards. I believe Parab and OSAC are doing a time change.
Yeah, I don't know if they approved it yet, but it looks like some earlier, 5:30, I don't know if it changes over to summer, but it gets dark soon. And and it seems like it probably is pretty reasonable just to start a little earlier. What time? I thought even one talked about 4, but whatever works.
Okay. Yeah, that was kind of the idea behind it with staff, was maybe cut down some overtime for the hourly employees that attend to take the notes and help with the minutes and all of that. So it's up for discussion for the board.
Right. Anybody, does this create a hardship for any board members or the public? Question,
Not I, and even if we want to push it to 5. that's
Yes.
Okay.
Carl?
So
Yes.
two things, if I may, just one clarification. So I was under the impression that many of the minutes were actually done from video. So is that overtime because people are watching the video to do the minutes, or they're not able to fit that in their 8-hour job? And then the second piece, for me, 4 o'clock would be a bit too early, at least for in person. I would prefer something a tiny bit later.
Okay, what would you recommend or what would you like to see?
4:30 or after would be more convenient for me personally.
All right. Other comments? Yes.
Rolf here. Yes, I definitely would like it earlier. And in fact, a day meeting would work even best for me during the day. But I don't think that's going to happen. But we go back to the original when we met in the morning, which was great. But the earlier, the better for me. So 4:30 or even in the day.
Okay. Other comments? Anybody else have any comments? Yes.
So,
I-
go ahead, Joy.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to interrupt. I'm for earlier meetings. I think 4 is a little too early for a lot of us, but certainly 5:30. And if it helps staff with the workload and overtime, that's always a good thing. So people don't get overly tired.
Do you want to settle on either 5 or 5:30 as your preference?
I go to the board on where people are feeling. I could go either way.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
I've got a comment now, even though I told you I didn't have one earlier, but the reason I can join you tonight is that it's not when we're trying to run our store. And I think it's probably a similar situation for Shimmy. And if Mike Barsotti wants to come, we're probably better off if you have a meeting either in the morning or if you stick to your 6 p.m. if you want us to come back to a meeting in the future ever.
So what is good time for you?
Either in the morning or 6 p.m. is good. But if you do it at 4:30, of course you said you don't get many visitors ever. Just so happens at our last meeting, Bob invited us all to come to one of your meetings. And if you were holding tonight's meeting at 4:30, there's no way most of us could come to that.
Okay, well, we don't want to cut out the public, that's for sure. So would you name a time that would be reasonable for you? Anytime.
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said either in the morning or 6 p.m. just like you did tonight, either
Specific
one.
time. Would you?
9 in the
5:30
morning,
satisfactory?
9:30 is fine, or stay with 6. But it seems like the city people, they should all be at work at.
Okay. Okay.
No, thanks for coming. I think it's important that we get together more often. I thought, Roy, you were doing a consensus with that email you sent out a while ago. So I guess I thought that would, because you said to send an email to you and separate from everybody else. So
Right. The email I got, the separate email, most folks said that they don't want to do it too early. So I think we were, that's why I think we came up with the 5:30 time, 5 or 5:30. Again, even we do at times have another staff member here doing minutes, or we have at this meeting. Most of it is that we're just even no different than Kevin and I even. It ends up being a very long day, and then tomorrow we come back in at 8. And so it becomes hard. And so we're just trying to see if we can go a little bit earlier, so we can just get out a little bit earlier. So 5:30 is totally okay with us. But I do think, remember, if I recall, we were in the mornings at one point and we never got anyone. And I do agree, in the evening, we have a better chance to get a few people here. And that's why we made the change. But too early is probably not great for most people either. So.
Well, my comment would be, I prefer earlier too. I prefer 5, but, and with all due respect, I mean, I think the priority has to start with us. I mean, with our work schedules being on the board.
I prefer 5 o'clock too.
So, I mean, I'm not saying we want to get as many people involved as we can, but again, I looking around, I don't know if we agree. I mean, I think our time as being on the board should come first. And so I would prefer 5, personally.
I would
Okay.
agree with 5.
5 is good with me.
Well, let's have a show of hands. Everybody in favor of 5 o'clock, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's fine. with me, too. So, okay. I think we're settled on 5 o'clock. And maybe I'd like a motion on that.
Before we do that, Bill, was there also a component to that about
Yes.
structure of the meeting and trying to be a little more time conscious, or is that a separate issue?
Well, back in the day, I think we were hitting 4 hours on meetings. So we've already cut it back pretty close to 2 hours. I think now it's,
Except for the
It's-
last
except
meeting.
I heard the last one. So we do want to remind, just like at council meetings, when we do PowerPoints or presentations, to keep them on the time limit. PowerPoints are basically 7 by 7, so 7 slides with 7 bullets, with 7 words per bullet. And the rest is brought up by the one doing the presentation will speak more about each bullet. But we need to have some time limits on that as well. And we do that with council too, so we don't end up with really long meetings. Otherwise, I think we're definitely doing much better on the agenda items and getting through those. But it would be important that we keep track of time. And if someone sees we're going past some of the time, that we probably remind the group we need to move on, and maybe we have to table it till next time. So.
Okay, I'd like a motion on 5 o'clock for meeting start. Who would like to move that?
I would make a motion that we start our meetings at 5 PM.
Thank you.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Roy, there was another part of that you sent us about doing quarterly or every other month.
There was, I had a few people said they would do quarterly, every other month. But we did have a couple that wanted to keep it monthly. Kind of the rule on that, when the city administrator let us know that we should ask that question, was that we have to have 100% for a change, or we keep it the same. So since we didn't have 100% saying, bi-monthly or quarterly, we will keep it monthly at this time. And we can always ask the question again later if we get caught up, I suppose, on some of the parking and mobility issues.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is the MAP board retreat. Location, agenda items, and what is staff's feeling on this?
I think it's a good idea that we have a retreat once a year. We do that with Parab. OSAC does that. And we just spend time on setting our agenda for the year and the priorities to focus on. The question would be, do you want me to facilitate it? Because we do need someone to facilitate a meeting like that. Do you want me part of the group for thinking about what to do and what we're going to do in 2023? If that's the case, we probably have to bring someone in to help us facilitate a good meeting on items for 2023. And that's how most groups do it. So
My thoughts on retreats is that you would be more helpful as part of the group and not the facilitator.
Yeah.
okay, then what my job will be is to see if I can find someone to facilitate. Is that fair? like, for example, our city administrator has done a few, maybe she's willing to do it if she has time. Or we have to pay someone to come in and do it.
Well, maybe we can scope out what we're planning to do at the retreat. I think that's important. Did we identify priorities for the year?
Right. And that's where the facilitator will come in to help us stay on track and to do that.
The only confusion I have is, didn't we already agree on goals and a lot of stuff that would have come out of a retreat? We've already made them public, I think, to the board. So I'm just wondering, did we mistime this a little?
Well, I think we did. Yeah.
Do we want to take those items and then review them as part of the retreat?
Well, why don't we do that? We've got the items as a starting point, and we can add or subtract as we see fit.
Okay, and that's what council has done. We had items on the list and then a facilitator came in and went through the items and kind of helped prioritize. So we can do something like that. And I know Kevin's hand was up. He's kind of hidden back there today, but if he had anything he wanted to add.
Kevin, do you have any comments on this?
You actually hit it right at the end there, Roy, that we have that list. Now this is our opportunity to prioritize that list.
Right.
Okay, so I'll still see how we're going to get maybe someone to facilitate that, to make it smooth, help us put it, in some kind of prioritized way and help us guide us through that process. And I'll be part of the group to help with that process.
Would that replace the January meeting? I think it
Correct.
could and should.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
That would just, and we can pick another time to do it. Like if there's a better time to do that instead of this meeting hour time, we may consider that, because it is, some of them do it.
Can most of us make the same day, just move the meeting in the day and add a couple more hours? So I don't know the.
Yeah,
date
the
of
one
next
time
month,
is, that's pretty typical too, is this, even that, the start a little earlier or something, I don't know, but I'm open to anything, willing to do what the group wants to do, but some don't even do it here. I know that Parab has done it at the MAC. And they do it there in a room and it's still open to the public if they want to come sit there. Normally they don't, but
I'd sort of like to do it at the MAC.
yeah, so we could have more of a really good discussion around
Yeah.
small table, not as formal in a sense. And
Exactly.
yeah, so I could try to arrange that if you want to.
Well, the next question is when?
That's a good question. I'll have you all can decide and then I have to see if what's available, but okay, and then same time, or do you want me to try to move that a little bit early so we can have, maybe we need an extra hour? I don't know. Sometimes it takes a little longer when we do a workshop like that, but
It probably needs another hour.
Okay.
I would think, because retreats typically, everybody talks and
yeah.
you finally maybe not get to
So
conclusion.
maybe like a 4 to 7. So we just go an hour earlier. If someone can't make it, that's fine for that first hour, but we go 4 to 7. And we find a room where we can have a good discussion on these topics for 2023 and where we want to go with them.
How's
So-
everybody feel about 4 to 7? Anybody have a problem with that?
I think, there's no problem with that. I'd suggest, I know it might not be the popular opinion, but with retreats, it typically is even longer than that, not just an extended meeting time. So maybe even start at 3. And if we get out earlier, great. But what I don't want to do is go even further past 7 when we started at 4. If we want to really have a good retreat and we're in the thick of things, I don't want to cut us short if we're really in the meat of a good retreat. And I think that should be the goal and priority of this. So I'd suggest bumping it up even earlier, if possible, to making it at 3 o'clock.
Okay,
Okay, and that's it's a special thing, so it's not like we're going to do that all the time early. But I agree. I think the later we go, the harder it gets. And
Agreed.
we had that task force one point, I think that came at 8 or 9 o'clock at night and it was getting difficult. And that was just with 3 or 4 of us. Because there's a lot to discuss sometimes. So maybe we do a 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. that day as our plan. And again, if someone has to come in a little late, I get it. But otherwise, we're going to probably go too late. And I do want to, if we go past 7 a little bit, that's probably then more tolerable than to, stay until 9 or 10 at night. So.
Corey?
Yeah, I just want to say I like the direction. I like the idea that we might spend a little more time on it. I also want to say I think this is a really crucial thing for us to do as a board at this time. We have set some priorities before, but the whole last year has been a transition. We've got our new name and our new mandate and everything. We've also got some of the recommendations that we see in the PPACG study that we're going to talk about in a minute that I think are important to evaluate. And I think our board is at a point, we've had the evolution from, SP Plus and coming in-house and this big change. I really think it's important for us to understand what our priorities are as a board, not just say, hey, what do we think the priorities are for Manitou, but what are the activities that our board does? How do we best support staff? How do we best support council and make sure that we're moving ahead with things that we think are important for this board to be working on? So strong proponent of this retreat idea. The only other thing I would say is there a standard scope for a retreat like this, or would you like us to have input on scoping it? Or I suppose you don't know yet, Roy.
Yeah,
Who might do it?
I would look at some past meetings we did with other boards. And so that's where facilitator could help us. Just they would set that up and we don't need to worry about that part. They would set up the plan. So let me work on that a little bit to see, and then I'll make sure that the board gets that information on the plan. The only thing, Corey, that I'm concerned with is that we're now extending a meeting out probably further and with a lot, it's diluted with many other topics. I would say that we focus on the plan, our goals, and then if we want to have another meeting at some point to discuss details of the board's role, I think that's actually probably a different discussion. It's just going to add to a list of 3 hours of really focusing on the goals we have for the year. So I think we're adding too much to it. When the other boards do their goal session, that's what it is. It's a strategic plan for goals. And we don't talk about other parts of the role of the boards. We actually focus on those goals. We need to focus on what the board wants to do in town. So that's really what this is about. We can take an hour in our regular meeting to talk about roles and responsibilities, I think. So that's my opinion, if anyone wants to chime in.
Okay.
Well, could I just respond to that and say, I understand what you're saying and don't want to turn it into something else. Maybe what I will request, and I think Natalie is still here, but I would request that we've got some council engagement with this just to make sure that we're on board with at least today what council thinks we ought to be doing and make sure that we're, as we set our priorities, we're setting things that are reasonable for a board like ours to be working on. Thanks.
Well, I would hope that our liaison would join us for the retreat to hear what we have to say. Is that going to work for you?
Yeah, I was just going to confirm. So we're talking about the 25th of January?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm available.
What date are we talking about? 25th of January.
Okay. And I can actually reserve that room too right now if you'd like to use the conference room.
And this is an open meeting. This is just like any other meeting.
That's correct. It would
Yeah.
have to be posted as open and anyone can attend. And
So-
thank you, Natalie, for taking the task off my list of setting it up.
Yeah, I can do that right now. And then, yeah, and I'm also available that day. So, yeah.
So on that,
Thank
then
you.
I mean, I would like to see us get as many attendees as possible. I mean, I learned a lot attending the Metro Board meeting and, I'd love to see, honestly, I'd love to see each ward represented in the city so that somebody that lives in Crystal Hills can talk about their concerns versus somebody that lives downtown. I mean, maybe I'm getting too broad here, but I will go back to what I initially said. I would love to promote this and try and make or encourage people to want to come. And maybe it could even be separated by, hey, that's just going to be too much. But, from 3 to 4, we're talking about Crystal Hills. And from 4 to 5, we're talking about, something like that. I just would like to see more representation from the community. And I get why they don't come to these meetings, but maybe we could drum this up to be something special, including Metro.
What about an idea that
Can't hear you.
you as
Bill.
I'm sorry. What about your approach of talking to people in Crystal Hills specifically and informing them or asking them what are their concerns? The concern I have is it's going to turn into a big, long meeting and we won't get anything done. And we'll be hearing, the various concerns and so forth and so on. So if we can collect all this stuff ahead of time.
How would we do that? A great idea.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
not sure.
one way to do it is just walk around the neighborhood and talk to your neighbors.
Yeah.
Spread the word, you know,
I-
like you're running for
mean,
office.
At a minimum, I think we could maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, ask the city to help us with just communication. I
Well,
mean, could we
maybe we
pound
can.
the social
Maybe-
media? Could we pound the, get in the paper, whatever?
What about the newspaper and what about? Yeah.
So my concern with that, of course, is some of the concerns you bring up, Bill, is definitely a concern. How involved are they going to be and want to change things even, goals were already set. The other thing is space. I don't know what the MAC holds, and then suddenly we do have 30 people showing up, then what? I doubt we have the room for that, but I don't know. That's up to
Well,
Natalie. So I kind of like the idea as representatives of areas that you try to get a feel of maybe your neighborhood and then bring that back here as the representative. And how you do that, maybe where maybe we can help is if you want to have a meeting somewhere in your neighborhood or something, then maybe we can see if we can get that out there, that this area is having a neighborhood meeting with the representative or something. I'd have to check on how we do that, but we have done that for neighborhood areas before for the city.
Could open
but
their house up and just
They could,
invite them.
they could. I think that'd be
Well,
totally
okay, I'm not going to do that,
No.
to be honest. I mean, I'm in this, I'm looking more for technology. Could we do a jot form? Could the city send out, a Google form?
We
They have
can-
the opportunity to
we
send
can
it
do
to
it
us
Google.
electronically. I mean, that would eliminate your concerns about crowds, but I'm sorry, I'm just not
No,
open up my house.
Totally understand.
If we did that, we probably should keep it at City Hall. Then we have room for people to sit, and we-
That's true.
right? So that would have to be the decision if we want to just encourage more and more people to be here.
Yeah, but excuse me, I know, but let me just, but I'm saying, let's not invite people, but let's just get a document out. And if they want to send us their priorities, we can still do it over there is what I was saying.
Okay, so yeah, so a Google survey or something sent out to the public if they want to respond to
Right.
these goals or something, I
I
guess. is
think
kind
it's
of what-
really important to reach out to the public since we're
Right.
representing.
So to clarify though, this survey document would be listing of the goals. Do they have any comments about the goals we're presenting? Because we can't really necessarily add goals now. We already made that decision. So is that what we're asking for? Maybe?
Yes. Corey?
Yeah, I think I'm going to respectfully disagree with that direction. I think the important thing, what we want to do right now is set the strategy and priorities for this board that we think are relevant for this year. I want to be clear that I'm very interested in public input, whether that's through community meetings or surveys. And we talked a little bit about some surveys in the past, but there's a lot that goes into making a survey. And I see that as a separate activity from the setting of the goals for this group. And just as a reminder, as you know, if we have this as it's an open meeting subject to the meeting laws, even though it's a 4-hour meeting, it's got to be chaired and facilitated. And frankly, the public is not going to have a lot of time to have active participation in that. It's not the same event. If coming out of the Strat meeting, we say, you know what, we think it's a priority for us to improve on our engagement with the public. Maybe we set it, just brainstorming, we might set a task to say, hey, we're going to have this kind of survey and this kind of outreach, and this is the kind of information that we want to gather from the public. I think that's absolutely important and part of what we should do. And I just feel that should be kept separate from the retreat. Thank you.
I'm going to agree with Corey, and I respectfully agree with you on that we don't need to do it at this meeting. But I do think there has to come a time when we have to stop saying nobody comes to our meetings and look ourselves in the mirror and say, are we really doing everything we can as a city? And I look at our communications and I follow our social media, and I don't think we promote this meeting. I don't think it's out there. I don't think we do enough to encourage people to come just to our regular meetings. So I blame us for that. And us meaning the city as well with the communications. So, but I
Okay.
agree with you, Corey.
Yeah,
You're right.
Rolf's hands up.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, Rolf's hands up there.
Rolf?
You're muted, Ralph.
Thank you, Luke. Yeah, I don't think we need to be talking about this much. This is our retreat. The public can attend, they can watch, they can participate ahead of time by giving us items, but this is our retreat. This is for us to talk about, and the public is invited, but we're not reaching out to them. This is not a open house. We can have those in the future. We can talk about that during our retreat. This is our retreat. I think we were set at 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock on the 25th, and I'd like to move ahead.
Okay, so you're agreeing with Corey and
Correct.
Bob? Yeah, go ahead.
And when I think about some of the other boards, when they do their retreat, it's truly about the board. And what was said here makes a lot of sense. They focus on the goals and prioritize those and work on how we're going to do that for the next year. And it's not necessarily at that time the information from the public per se, because we're past that. What we have to consider for that in the future, I think, is to Bob's point, that through the year, can we get more people maybe to get involved a little bit and give the information so that when we plan for the following year's goals, do we have enough input from the community then, and how do we do that? And that way, when it's this time again next year in January, you can go back to this meeting again and set the prioritize things based on the year's feedback from the community. So we're kind of past that, and we need to really focus on this board's goals now that have already been set.
Okay, other thoughts from online? Yes, Carl.
So I agree with Rolf. This is going on way too long, but Roy, you triggered a thought. I mean, we already have some public input with the Traffic Safety Board, right? We've had numerous applications for the Traffic Safety Board where neighbors have taken the time, gone out and solicited petitions from their neighbors about specific concerns for their particular neighborhood situation. So I think we have maybe more data than we actually are aware of already.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts?
Just,
Yes.
I agree, we should move
Right.
on, like Rolf has said, it's really a retreat about the board.
Yeah.
That's what we should focus on.
Okay, I think we got a unanimous opinion on that.
Yeah, we'll still get it out there. It is a public meeting. And then if someone shows up and you want to ask if they have 3 minutes to respond to anything, and great, we can get their little feedback. But at that point, we need to focus on these goals as a group now that have been, in a sense, studied, have been, like Carl said, you know, we have a traffic safety board now, and they have, so, you know, there's some input there. I think we have enough to plan for 2023. And at some point we have to take action. You know, we can get input forever and it changes year by year or month by month sometimes, but we have to go ahead and make some decisions and move forward. So that's what this board's all about.
Okay, just to.
I'd like to request that we have the agenda by the December meeting, and that way we're at least 1 month out, that we all know what's going to be on the agenda, and we can also then publish that agenda for the retreat.
I don't think.
There will be
Is
no
that not
December
gonna
meeting.
turn-
This one covers both
Oh,
months.
bummer.
However, I can send out the plan for the meeting to the board, blind copy the board on the plan. And then also, you know, we're gonna have to promote it and stuff. So we'll
Yeah.
do that.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, Roy,
Go ahead, Corey.
could I request that maybe you send it out and just ask for, like, you know, feedback over a day or two, like, hey, this is what we think the retreat's going to look like, rough agenda for it. Any comments or feedback on that? In case there were ideas that didn't get captured or something.
Yeah, I have no problem. Again, I won't be setting it up probably. I'm gonna have someone who does those type of things do it. And then, of course, if there's any feedback, you bet, always will just send me your emails on thoughts and then we'll look at that. So.
Thank you.
Okay, just to sum up, we're talking January 25th from 3 to 7 PM. And Natalie's going to set up the MAC to accommodate us, and we will put out a public notice of the meetings for law and see where we go. And Roy, you're going to put together a list of starting points, or you both of you guys, based on what we told City Council. A lot of this we just pull out of the PowerPoint.
Yeah, we'll totally follow the goals from the PowerPoint and just kind of set up the agenda, how it's going to work out based on some experts in the field to help us guide us through a good meeting.
Sounds.
And then
sounds
we'll
great.
get some feedback if there's any thoughts and be happy to see if that works with, the experts on
Okay,
the best way to do that. So.
good. Everybody okay with all this?
Yes.
Okay, let's move ahead. I don't think we need a motion on this one. Okay, the next item. You're no longer accepting cash for paid parking, or want to run that by us, Kevin. Would you go ahead with that?
Yeah, it was brought to our attention in June, and Roy had Interstate Parking of Colorado come down and shadow us, give us best practices. And they also mentioned it about the cash and coin collection, the amount of time and resources that it's taken for that versus the revenue percent that we're actually gaining from that. In the packet, it shows November of last year through last month to give you a 12-month capture of everything. And it's just steadily gone down. We're right now at 2% of our monthly revenue is in cash or coin. Everything else is coming in at credit card. The average cash and coin revenue over the last 12 months was only 3.1%. We take 2 staff members almost every Wednesday, all day, emptying machines, replacing the coin boxes, bagging the coins. We run to the bank. It's taken 2 officers out of patrol all day long. Our vehicle ends up leaving the city because we have to transport the cash and coin to the bank. This would just eliminate that. And it would actually free those officers up where collections could then be done in the office by the parking bookkeeper and myself. We can pull the reports remotely through the kiosk software that we have.
Kevin, question? Have you run it by the chamber?
It was brought to their attention when we first discussed it, and then we ended up having to table it to this meeting, so it will be brought back up to the chamber. And I did see Roy had his hand up as well.
Roy?
Yeah, we still need to let Leslie know. But from a staffing standpoint, we are spending a lot of money on staffing to handle this coin collection for very minimal gain. The other part is safety. To have money out there on the streets and collection is not a safe task for our officers, our parking officers. And there's risk involved, a lot more that we'd rather not have when we're only collecting like 3.5% of our total revenue. So it makes a lot of sense to move away from that as it goes along. So few people are doing it anyway, and credit cards are kind of the standard going forward. And even from there, the new text to park is probably eventually going to get rid of kiosks. It's just moving in that direction with COVID kind of set that in motion with touching a kiosk in the first place. So we're trying to move in that direction and just don't find it makes a lot of sense for us from a staffing perspective and budget perspective. And biggest thing for me is safety.
Sure. Corey?
Well, I just have a
So
comment.
can I ask, is
I'm sorry. Let's get,
Can you just recognize me, Mr. Chair?
yeah, go ahead, Corey.
Thank you.
We'll
So my
be right
question
with
is this a decision that has been made already, or are you looking for a recommendation from us in order to move ahead with this?
We want the board's thoughts. It is an operational thing, but we do appreciate the board's opinion. And again, we don't necessarily just want to go do something at times without making sure there's an understanding of it. But from a budget standpoint, from a city side of it, it doesn't make sense to continue with that kind of program when it just doesn't seem worth it. But we also need to talk to the chamber still. So we're still gathering some information and also opinions.
Okay, well, with that, then I guess the comment I'd like to make, I mean, I agree conceptually that cash is expensive and potentially dangerous to handle. But I also might say, that is potentially part of the job. And what makes me nervous about this, as I think about what it means for Manitou is just the accessibility part of it. I know the Pike Ride program, for example, they've got a way that you can use Pike Ride without having to have a credit card. So some people don't have credit cards. Is there a major impact to the accessibility for a diverse, for that's what we want to encourage in Manitou. And so I'm bringing it up as a concern. I wouldn't necessarily oppose it. And I think generally people who have cars who are able to come here and park as a visitor probably do have access to a credit card. But that would be the reason that I think we would want to think carefully about it and see who are we excluding if we were to make that move. Thank you.
I'll just say that I think that's a valid point. Kevin has his hands up, but I think that's something we definitely probably need to discuss. Does it exclude anyone from being able to use that? And we really did not, I don't believe we talked about that, Kevin, but do you have any knowledge from that, from the interstate parking or anything?
No, but I do know that T2 with the mobile pay, they do offer Google Pay, Apple Pay. You can link your bank account through it where it's a virtual card. So there are options for people that have a bank account to link that and use the text to pay option.
Yes, Joy,
Oh, did you call on me?
yes.
Oh, okay. As we move forward in Manitou, the cashless American society, we are going that way. I'm concerned when you tie up 2 police officers when we're already, stretching our police force pretty thin and collecting the coins, when most of us would have trouble finding the coins. I agree with Roy and Kevin that it's time that we sort of move forward with this. And I don't believe we would exclude people with Apple Pay, Google Pay, and all those kinds of things that all of us, many of us have in this area. So I would be very willing to change how we do the collections. To tie up that many people for that long and going to the bank and taking officers off the street, I think the number of people we have in Manitou, it's not, if we have a different way to do it, I would want to do it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Right.
Yeah, I want to clarify something really quick. So we don't even have the police staffing to help safeguard the parking staff. It is done completely by the parking staff themselves out there. So we don't even have the police staff to do that at all. So I just wanted to make sure that's clarified. And
that's,
Kevin, we wanted to add on to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, and I just wanted to add on that it's not just affecting my department. We do empty the coin boxes in finance. That disrupts their operation. That takes up space in their offices. And that's more of a safety because of the windows that we have in the parking office for the service and the double glass doors. Finance has a secluded room, but it does take up a lot of their room, make a lot of noise for about 45 minutes to an hour on a good summer week.
I just wanted to add, Kevin, having experienced when I was a principal, someone robbing the lunch funds right in front of our school from the officers who brought it in. It's a pretty scary situation when you have some people now doing sort of catch and grab things, that you have people out there without protection. It's not a good experience.
I think I'm hearing unanimous support.
No,
Oh, yeah. Carl.
we have 2 people with their hands up. I think Carl was first.
Carl?
So I don't disagree with this. I totally get the staffing and the security risk concern. But I just wanted to point out that this is heading us in a direction, and this is a bit of a fringe case, but it's heading us in a direction where if for some reason that credit card system stops working because of, maybe some ransomware attack or that kind of thing, we have no backup, right? And so having the cash option maybe gives us some diversity and allows us to continue operations in that kind of scenario. And I understand that is a fringe scenario.
Well, the question then is, have we experienced in our credit card use to date, have we had a problem?
We have had no virtual attacks, no physical attacks, nothing like that to our merchant accounts on the back end that provide the credit card service to us. And I do want to point out that the infrastructure, should there be an internet issue where we're losing this connection, the cash and coin infrastructure will remain in there and we can turn it back on. So if we ever experience that, we can turn the cash and coin back on for the duration of the problem.
Yeah, and real quick add on, Kevin, I don't think we're talking about the Smithsy lot or Wichita. The Metro Board would have to make that decision if they want to go that route. Is that correct?
That is correct. And their meeting is coming up. Shimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, the 14th, and it will be an agenda item for your December meeting to discuss as well. So right now we're only talking about the city operated parking, the on-street, Canyon Lot, Bar Trail.
Luke, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think, all arrows point in that direction. I'd love to hear that we've had 0 attacks on any or failures on any of the credit card payments. I mean, all of this is just pointing in that direction. What I'd like to see is just a backup, and you answered that question, just to be easy turn back on, accept cash. That's not a problem. Cory brought up the fact that this might disproportionately impact some groups of people. I think that's very important for all of us to consider. I'm not saying that's a boundary not worth working through and hopping over, but it needs to be recognized. That being said, if there's a way for somebody to come into the office and pay for parking for a really one nuanced thing, I know that, for example, the railway, we get a lot of Amish groups in, and they don't travel necessarily with credit cards or different things, but just to be open and willing to handle those one-off cases, which I'm almost certain you can and would be happy to do. But it's important that we recognize those impacted groups that we might not immediately think of.
Any response?
I am in a opposition of this. I think that we need to keep the cash, especially for a lot of our demographics of people who live in Manitou. Also, there's a lot of people who do not have credit cards, not going to be able to do that. So I think right now, in the future, obviously it's going to happen, but I am not in favor of it. I think we should continue with the cash for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Okay,
I think.
Can I
we've got-
comment?
Yes.
So this is incredibly ironic. Shemmy's here. Rolf's here. They both know my very strong feelings that it's crazy that we have 2 systems in this town. So what I'm hearing is Rolf's going to vote on the Metro side not to do this. So now we have a city where some meters have cash, some don't have cash. So I don't want to go off topic here, but this illustrates, and I don't even know if it's on the agenda. I don't see it on there, but I just don't understand why we operate this way, period. I'm for this. I think it's a good idea. I agree with Luke. We need to have recourse. We also need to have, some response when somebody complains and represents those groups. But I'll say that's all. That's all I've got.
Then it raises the question, what's Metro going to do?
Well, that's nothing to do with this topic. I don't think. I don't think that has anything to do with this. Obviously, it would be a pain, but no, I'm not speaking for Metro right now at all. So I'm just saying that in general, I think there's a large percentage of people who come here are not going to like that. I mean, probably the many people who live in Manitou are of lower income and are not even going to have access to things like this. And many of our visitors who come are not going to have this. So that's just from my personal view. Obviously, I'm in the minority here, but I know it's a real pain to get the money. Maybe we could just, I don't know how often we do have to empty the machines, if it really has to be done every week, if we could stretch that out every 2 weeks if possible. I understand in the summer probably wouldn't, but so I'm just saying myself, I am against it. I think I would prefer us to continue the system that we have.
So I would just
need
like-
to make a quick comment because we're kind of getting a little bit off topic into Metro districts area at this point. We're really talking about our city sites, and if that's a different discussion with the Metro District on how we work together, that's a different discussion. So all we're focusing on right now is our city ones, and then we would talk with them, and that's how it's set up. So I understand it makes it complicated, but I think we just need to make that an item for a future agenda item to discuss how we work with I keep saying Mountain Metro, but it's actually Metro District Board on some of these discussions so that we can be on the same page.
I'm just going to comment, Rolf, it's not a large percentage. It's 3% or less. You said it's a large percentage of people. 3% or less is not large in my mind. And Roy, with all due respect, I don't know how we make a decision without that. In fact, I will vote no to the cash because if I had a vote, I know I don't, because of the uncertainty. So I don't think these issues can be separated. If you asked me to vote and I suspected that the Metro Board was going to go opposite, for consistency's sake, I would say let's table it for a year, even though I agree 100%, we should go away from cash.
That's a valid point, and that's why we're asking the question today. So again, from an operational standpoint, we have something to go back and discuss some of these things that are brought up. And so I think this is very valuable for Kevin and I tonight to look at the other side and what we have to discuss to how we go forward. At the same time, we have to decide how we work with the Metro District, if it's always based on their decision and not on our decision, or how do we work together to find something that will work for, the whole city. And I agree with you, Bob. I'm not sure I want them different. I think we need to keep consistency as well. So again, this was very good discussions for sure. And we'll take that back, Kevin and I, and talk on how we move forward on this, or table it until we figure out how to do that.
Just a thought, a possible, I won't call it a solution, but a middle ground might be, okay, when is the hazard to the parking people occur? It occurs during peak summer time. And during the winter time, we don't really have those safety issues. At least I don't see it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, actually, we're seeing an uptick now
You are.
in activity at several city facilities
Okay.
around here. Yes. So it really,
Scratch that idea.
yeah, it really doesn't always mean summertime. But I do like the idea of, can we collect a little less often? I don't know that, and Kevin would have to answer that.
Kevin?
Not trying to sway anybody. This is purely informational. Collections were completed today after the busiest shopping weekend of the year.
Really?
For
Wow.
reference, the Canyon lot had 0 cash and coin. It was all credit card transactions.
Okay.
The summer poses a threat. We obviously have more people on the street seeing what we're doing. I would then flip that to the winter. Now we're moving this vehicle out of city limits in adverse weather. And that in itself is a danger as well. Just throwing it out there, the different points of view, not trying to sway anybody. Just what I'm hearing from my staff. The bank we use, we have to go up some pretty big hills. City of Colorado Springs isn't the best at plowing all the time. And there's been some concern about driving where they need to go to get to the bank. And
Okay. I'm hearing a strong staff recommendation that we do away with cash. At this point, I think there's a split board here on whether or not we do it, but it is an operational decision, I believe. It's a staff decision to make. And we, I think, ought to just back away from it a little bit as a board and let you all decide it and execute it. And if it doesn't work, tell us about it.
Yeah, you gave us good food for thought. Some things we didn't consider that are important. So we'll go back and discuss some of those challenges to move forward on this, and then try to make the right decision and let the board know, so everybody knows what we're doing. But I appreciate the input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's, we don't have any new business items, so let's move on. Did I miss one? Oh, you're data driven. Let's talk about data driven. this board at our last meeting, we talked a lot about having data-driven decisions. And I think, Bob, you specifically brought that up. And I think you're absolutely right. It went into the PowerPoint presentation that we gave City Council, and they didn't shirk from that when I said, well, data-driven means you got to hire somebody to go out and count A, B, C, and D, or whatever it is. And we would have to specify that and see if it's worth the money to go out and do that. So, but I wanted to sample the board and find out what you all feel about how our decision-making process works. Do we need data in every case? I don't think so, but there are definitely cases where we do. So comments, Corey.
Yeah, thanks for the chance to comment. I actually had brought this up in an email prompted by Bob's comments last meeting. And I strongly believe that we ought to understand what data sources are truly available to us today. What are their pros and cons and their strengths and weaknesses? Because every data set has got that. We talked a little bit about the Strava data set and how it can show you some things, but it's an incomplete data set. And that's really going to be the case with a bunch of different sources. So the thought that I had after mulling it over a little bit and actually had listened to a podcast about it, I really would like, as a board, if we could better understand what tools are available today. And then, maybe we could contemplate what might we want to invest in order to improve the way that we can collect data. Obviously, you can pay someone to sit there and count, but these days you've got cell phone data, traffic light data, different kinds of apps that can provide data. Some of them we would have to pay for the data, but I would really encourage us to move in that direction and to try to have data that could support decisions that we make in nearly every case.
Okay, further comments?
Well, just in those last 2 years, we've seen a lot of instruments implemented by the city to give us that data. So I think that it'd be silly for us not to already use it. I don't necessarily know why. It's really up for discussion, really. I mean, if we have data, let's use the data. If we want to learn more, and if we think of a way like the Strava app or different programs to utilize, and we contemplate, okay, is it worth X amount of dollars? Then great. That'll be a decision and bridge to cross at that time. Should data always be used? I think it's a good tool to have. I really do. For us to have a data set and us not analyze it purposefully, and to go around using that for our own butterfly feelings, that's probably not the best decision. We're all here to look at the tools and use the tools accordingly. And if we can purchase more tools, and if we find that there's value in that, then sure, we can do that at that time. But I think that the tools that we have in place over the last few years, it'll give us outstanding amounts of data. And we've seen that from Kevin's reports monthly. Truthfully, we've made decisions already based on that information. I think that's important, and it's put us in the correct path.
Okay, let's talk about traffic and El Paso, for example. We're talking about micromobility, Mobility Boulevard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that struck me is that, well, maybe we need to find out how many people really use El Paso in their vehicle, and when do they use them, and what is the traffic flow and stuff like that, so we can better assess how El Paso gets configured to provide the Mobility Boulevard image or actuality that we've been working on so much. And so, Carl, you want to weigh in on this?
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, we had data in the presentation, right? I reached out to Dole, and Dole did the
You did. Yes,
traffic.
you did.
I forget this stoplight or
Do
whatever the
Do we need any
program is.
more? I guess is the question then.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could assert that what was there maybe wasn't sufficient, but I thought that it did a pretty decent job and actually matched with the feedback that we've gotten from talking to neighbors. I also would point out that there was data collected before the painting of the turtles in front of Sunwater Spa. So there was some data collected around usage on El Paso that we could potentially pull in as well. So
I just used El Paso as an example, but
Right.
the overall question is, do we want to try to use data selectively when we need to get data to make an informed decision? That's
Bill,
where-
don't you already do that? I mean, I sort of agree with Luke that we need to get some tools or technology to help us, but I think we already use the data. I'm not sure what we're saying or wanting to vote on. I mean,
Well,
you know, I think El Paso, it's some interesting ideas and some developments, but you know, there's a whole lot of people that live in the villas that we all go down to El Paso to get out. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you can find out and talk about, but I'm not sure we need to formally say use data. We already use data. I mean,
Thank you, Joy.
So
Bob.
I full disclosure, I wasn't quite sure what we were talking about there, but now I remember. Carl, you're right. There was data, but my comment last time was if we're going to change El Paso or advocate for that, we need to know how many bikes, not automobiles, how many bicycles go down El Paso. And we don't have that data. And Corey, you'd mentioned Strava and other things like that. But specific to the last meeting that we had, my comment was, I'm all about dramatic changes to our streets, but don't just say a lot of people ride their bike down El Paso. We need to know how many, when. So it's, and Bill, you'd said automobiles. It's not really even automobiles that I was talking about. So we don't have that data. And that's what I was advocating for. And I think I said, let's spend the money that we may or may not get from the city to do a formal study. Let's not just anecdotally say, oh, a lot of people ride their bike down El Paso. That's where my take was on the data.
Corey.
Really want to agree with you, Bob. I think the conversation was not as much about like traffic counts, which are quite straightforward, but this idea of how do we measure other uses? And specifically, if we tried something, how would we know if it got better? And that prompted me to ask the question, well, really, what are those sources? So I hear that, you know, we had the study on El Paso, and you were able to get some information from Dole. What I'm asking for is, can we have a list of all the data sources that are in play today? And can we brainstorm what ones are available? Like, are we using Google data right now? I don't know. I don't think we're using Strava or Strava metadata. There are data sources that are out there that other communities are using that can help to measure non-vehicular use. And I'm specifically interested in being able to show an improvement or a change, or did it work or didn't it? And so I'm asking, you know, can we get a review of all the sources that are being used today? And then we can start looking at what are the other ones that we might use? Do we need to buy counters? Can we buy data from cell phone apps, or what are our opportunities to improve data, specifically looking at non-vehicular?
And Corey, I would throw in that we have bike ride data as well. I mean, they have the heat map of where the bikes are used, and that could be useful.
Which is great, and I don't know that we've ever, you know, brought that forward and used that here in this board. And so I'd like to have an assessment of all of those sources.
Okay, other comments, please.
Well, I just, if I may, I agree though with the item on the list here. I think some of us might be downplaying the significance of that bullet point. I think it's critical. I mean, you know, Kevin, I'll go to you. I'd like to know where the people are from that actually pay with cash. That would be an important thing to know, because, you know, Rolf said, I think I heard him say a lot of residents would be, you know, hurt by not being able to pay cash. I'd be curious to know where those people are from. I mean, so, you know, and we can find that out in 5 minutes, I would assume. So data is, I don't think we're hitting on all cylinders with data is my comment. So I do think it was valuable to have it on the agenda.
Other comments? Who else would like to weigh in? Yes, Roy.
Yeah, so the critical part for staff, you know, we have about, I don't know, I'm gonna guess 15 studies out there already. I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at them all. Is there data in there that can be useful? I know that I've looked at a few studies on the fact of and I can't remember what they called it, but if you get too much data, then, you know, how do you use it? And it just prolongs getting things done. So we got to be careful that we're just not going after data, because how are we using that data? What are the metrics for that used to decide on a bike trail or not, or whatever? We don't even know how we're going to use it. So before we spend money on more studies or anything else, I think we need to decide on what we're trying to accomplish, and then how we're going to use that data to help us make decisions before we do more studies, because we have so many studies in parking and mobility, probably not as much, because 10 years ago they weren't thinking that much about it. But so I get that part of it. I will tell you right now, we have the street light data, which Carl was mentioning, is something we teamed up with PPRTA. So it's actually all those cities that are involved with PPRTA, which is the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. So that can give us vehicles, but it also can give us bikes and pedestrian walking patterns. So it's now I have to see our level of service. So something on that, maybe we can expand that for a year or something and try to pick up that data. Keep in mind, it's about 3 months behind because it uses cell phones and stuff like that. So we have that capacity, but really that's what we need to know. I'll give you an example. The chamber recently said they'd like to get data from Streetlight. Well, what data and what do you need? It's more complicated than that. So we can develop those the software to actually give us what we need. Takes time and figuring that out. So we're willing to do that, but what we need to know is what are you trying to get, and then how we're going to use that to make decisions. And I think sometimes it's easy to think, well, we want to know how many bikes so we can make that a mobility. Well, everything I've studied about mobility is if we got to build it first anyway. So I don't know if it's really a bike path now. What do we want to make into a bike path is really the question, because when you build it, they start using it. It has to be safe first. So again, how are we going to use that data? How does it solve this problem is really what we have to talk about as a board. And then I can say, hey, we can do this for you from what we have. And if we don't, that's when we discuss how do we get further data through other ways, because all that takes a lot of time to figure out whether it's Google or anything else. Thank you.
So to sum it up a little bit, what I hear you saying is that if we hit a roadblock, if you will, on a decision about how to configure something, then we would go after data or acquire it whatever way we are able to be able to make that decision and move forward with one way or the other.
That actually could make a lot of sense. You know, what can we do now with what we have? Try to make decisions, but if we do hit an impasse, what do we have to do to get past that and keep going forward in decision making? And that may actually then make more sense. Hey, you know what? We need this data. Can we do it with what we have? Maybe. Let's check. Give us time to research. And then maybe we can tap into the same software to expand it to do that. If not, then maybe we have to look at software to do that. And then that takes time as well. We normally don't buy that quickly. We have to go and normally meet probably 2 or 3 times with the software developer. And then there's training, and then we're talking time with that. But we don't want more software too that we're not going to use. So we want to make sure it's something that's useful. And how does it really help us with decision making, or does it prompt more questions and then more delays in doing something?
Sure,
So
we don't want to fall in the
Yes.
data pit.
yes, and council mentioned, I believe,
Need another one.
That's my signal. That's it too. Yeah. Can I respond to that? Yeah, I'd like to finish real quick.
Yeah.
and I'll shut up. So real quick, what I was going to say was that recently at a council meeting, and Natalie, tell me if I'm off on this, but when we went over the parking goals, one of the questions from council is, when are we going to start making some decisions and doing things and not another study? So they also want to see a path forward. For example, Parab, they're doing Soda Springs Park, they're doing things now and not asking necessarily for more studies, but they're actually taking action. So I just want to make sure we're smart in using our funding, deciding on, you know, what we need at that point. And I'm not saying we don't need to head in that direction, but have we really looked at what we have and decide when we need it and for what reason? So now I'll stop talking. Thanks.
Thank you, Roy. Go ahead, Corey.
I really feel that the low hanging, I respectfully disagree. And I think you're backwards, Roy. I am asking to understand the capabilities of the data that we have today in order that we might understand better what information we can get from it. I don't think it makes sense for us to imagine what kind of things we might like to learn and then go see if the software will do it. What I'm asking for is we have data that we are collecting right now. I want to know a summary of all of those that are available to staff. So some of it was accessed by Carl by going through Dole. And you just mentioned some of the capabilities of the system that we've got. That's what I'm asking. I want to know, what do we have today? What is it capable of? And then we can start to look at how can we use the data that we've got today? What would be the most, how would we prioritize if we thought we needed more data in a certain direction, how would we prioritize spending money on that? So somehow there are multiple data sets that are available to staff, and I know some of them are in your head right now. I'm asking for this board to be able to better understand those capabilities so that we can start looking at what's missing.
Okay, I'd like to get some other opinions. Joy.
I would disagree with the previous statements. I really support how Roy is looking at it, how the council wants us to take some action. I think, you know, we can just spend our time doing data, collecting it. I think Carl did a good job at finding out things that he needed to look at his PowerPoint and moving forward. So I'm of the opinion and agreeing with Roy that we need to not just stay in the stasis of knowing all the, I mean, you can go online and look up all data sources yourself. I mean, I just think that we're just spinning our wheels if we continue to do this. So I agree with Roy and the approach that he mentioned.
Okay, further comments?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's
Luke.
important to have, and it's basic market research. And by what I mean by that is general studies as well. So it's not just the data, but we're not going to send a survey to everybody in Manitou that says, hey, what do you think? It's like, what do you think about what? Right? I mean, you have to decide the answers before you ask the question. And then you can really make decisive outcomes. And before we even get the answers back, we can say, okay, now what if all the answers are no? What if there are 500 bicycles a day that use El Paso? What if there are none? Right? And we're working through these what ifs ahead of time with the understanding that, okay, this is our boundaries. And we just have to really hone in on what the questions are before we ask them and understand what the answers might be. Because the general questions of, hey, what do you think about this? That's what gives us the arbitrary 5-hour-long meetings, right? When we bringing it back to the beginning of the meeting, when we were talking about the retreat, if I want the general public to join us, we're going to give them their section and their agenda items like, hey, general public, what do you think about A, B, C, and D? Don't talk about anything else because that's what's on the agenda right now. We want pointed, specific answers. And I think data helps us, you know, we just got to narrow it down. And first, we need to understand that the information that we already have on hand, right? So to Corey's point, we just want to understand that, hey, some of these questions have already been asked and we already have the answers. We just need to evaluate them. That it's as simple as that. And so we just got to find our questions and ask them appropriately. And the answer might be, we already have the data. Great, let's look at it. We're not going to spend $1,000 on a study that we already have.
Good point. Okay.
Sorry, Bill, I need to jump
Yeah,
in one
go
more.
ahead, go ahead.
I'm not everybody I think was at the last meeting. There was a very lengthy discussion about El Paso Boulevard. Somebody even said, let's put a no or road closed sign, things like that to keep people from going down El Paso Boulevard. And my comment was, That's the second major thoroughfare we have in this town. I would never support closing a road, or it wasn't paths, Roy. It was taking that, totally changing fundamentally the way El Paso. And my comment at the time was, and I still stand by it, is if you want my vote, again, I don't have a vote, but if you want my vote, show me how many bikes actually go down that doggone road, not, anecdotal information. So we're talking very broad here. I'm just trying to bring it back to the last meeting, and my comment was very specific. And if you weren't at the meeting, I'm trying to fill you in. It was very specific. These cool ideas about El Paso that would fundamentally change the way people get around this city. I wouldn't support that unless you could tell me here is at least an idea, a very close idea of what it's going to look like and how it's going to impact. So again, I'm sorry I'm jumping in on this again, but we're talking so broadly here. I'm just trying to bring us back to the last meeting, and it was specific to that road. And Corey, you and I think agreed that would be a good use of funds potentially if we have this money to actually find those answers. And then, okay, I'll support the road closed sign or all the other ideas that were kicked around.
Okay. Well, we've got some choices here. We have data out there. And the problem really is finding that data and applying it and asking the question, does it really apply to our situation? To answer your question. And if it doesn't, do we go out and hire somebody to do something? Or do we take Luke's approach of going and just, by gosh, build a pilot, execute the pilot, see how it works? Am I quoting you correctly, Luke?
Yeah, spaghetti on the wall, see what sticks. Sure.
Okay.
So to some aspects, yes.
Okay. And how do we get to that point? So we've got two contrasting approaches and two contrasting opinions. So Corey.
I think the way we do it, or the way, and I'm looking at the email that Roy sent when I requested to get the information about the current capabilities of our data set. And Roy, your recommendation was, in order for you to provide that to this board, you need a vote of over 51% of the board to ask you to provide that. So I'd like to make a motion that this board.
It also states, though, that I have to look at our staffing and requirements. I will also tell the board, just like every board, our expectation, if you want to help staff, and I think that's the point of having boards, then you take on some role too. And that means look at all these 15 already studies that we have done, which are sometimes repeats. But look at that to see what data is present so that we don't have to try to do that as well. But what I can provide or help with is, for example, like the streetlight data, and what I can find out what for sure if we can do the PED or bikes for that. And that's what I need from you all then, is that direction on what else we may need. So I can tell you right now that streetlight has capabilities for multiple mobility options. Again, I don't know if we have access to all those with our price range, but I can look at what it would take to expand that, which might be then a lot of cheaper. We already get it free. So maybe we can expand our portion with other parts of it if it's not already there. But then on the other research, I think Joy kind of mentioned, people can get a task force. Other boards do that. They set up a task force, go find out on the internet, get some data, and then bring it and let's talk about it and see how we use it. But again, we have to know what we want to use it for. I will say that the experts, and I totally understand Bob's point of view. We like to know, do we have 500 bikes a day using El Paso? Great, let's make it a mobility boulevard. But everything I understand from experts in the bicycle world, and Carl and maybe Corey can respond to this, but these are the studies that I've read, talks about that you have to have a safe traveling path for bikes on a street in order for people to really use it. And I'm not sure we have that. So that data is going to be, it's going to show maybe we don't have a lot of bikes on El Paso, but what is the reason? And if we made it safer for bikes, could we make that the path? So it sounds backwards, but it seems like in the bicycle and mobility world, you have to actually present those options first, because everything's designed for cars. And so it's not safe And that prohibits bicycle use and other mobility options. That's why I brought that up, because that's what experts are talking about. So since everything's car centric, it makes sense that they're okay with it, but are the mobility options okay with it? And I think the answer is no, based on experts in the field that I've read on this subject. So anyway, I think the data can be important. I'm not against it, but I also don't want it to be used as, okay, wait a minute, we only have 10 bikes on El Paso. It's not a good plan to make it a mobility boulevard. So I just want to make sure we're using it for what reason? What does it prove? How does it guide us going forward? So that's really, so we don't waste time on more data when we can we have pulled a lot of data lately, not necessarily on mobility though. So what I can tell the board right now is I can look into what Streetlight can provide from the free version we're getting from PPRTA. And if it's not pedestrian and bike information with this free version, can we expand our version to maybe get bike information and be able to at least tell the board where we stand right now with bicycle use or mobility use? But again, we got to be careful. What does that prove? What are we using it for, and how does it make a decision going forward? If it's just to say there's no bikes on El Paso, well, yeah, it's kind of a scary place to ride. We with the street diets helped. We have seen decreases in speed on cars because we can use Streetlight to kind of tell that. So there's things that can be helpful, but I just want to make sure there's that understanding. So specifically would like to know, we don't want to go on a path here as staff to dig in for hours and hours on everything we can find when we don't even know what we're using it for. Details on one or two items we can probably present and get in a month or two and get it to you. That makes sense for the data that's needed.
If I can just,
I
if I
think
can
that's-
finish the comment that I was in the middle of. I
Oh,
think
sorry, Corey.
there may be a misunderstanding. I'm not asking for another study. I'm not asking you to provide data. What I'm asking for is to understand the capabilities of our data collection that we've got today. And my specific reason is because I want to be able to take baseline data specifically on mobility so that we can try some things, try some changes, and see if we can measure a difference. Because I agree with you, no one's going to use the infrastructure if it's not there and safe. And I agree with Bob, we shouldn't blindly be making major changes without data. So what can we measure today so we can take a baseline? Then can we do some pilots? We can try some things and see what happens and let the data tell us if we're moving in the right direction. But today, I don't understand what data we have access, what kinds of data we have access to and our capabilities. And I don't think you want everyone on the board to go ask Dole the same question. So what I'm asking for is a staff presentation about what data sources are in use and available today. And I guess my question is, do you need a board motion in order for us to ask you for that?
And we haven't decided that's what we want to ask either.
Well, that's why we're talking about.
Corey is.
Let me make a
I think, one of the things, Roy, just an aside, is that there's a lot of neighborhoods in El Paso that really haven't been addressed. The demographics of Manitou need to be looked at. There's a whole lot of things that we can, really look at what we need to do, but I certainly don't need the staff to investigate all the data sources available. Thank you.
Can I make one more comment real quick, just
ahead.
to respond?
Yeah.
Actually, Corey, I just said that I could look at the micromobility or mobility through Streetlight. So I did actually just tell you that's something we can probably do, but I'd have to look into that. And if you're talking about mobility, that's probably our only software now that we can use to find out mobility or pedestrian. The other is all vehicle. So if we did like T2 and try to pull data from that, or if we did smarking, it would be all vehicle, cars and such. So in the Streetlight, we might be able to do pedestrian and bicycle. So that's what I'm telling you right now. And so I can see if I can pull data together on that. No, we're not. And if anyone on the board wants to look into that and get data from that, we're very happy to take a look at that at a board meeting.
Yeah, that,
Say, could I ask a question
No,
of the
we are
whole
not using
board?
that. I just told you the thing we're using. We are using Streetlight. That's all.
can we move ahead a little bit here? I
Yes,
would
sir.
suggest that you two guys talk to staff a little bit, so you can understand what staff has.
I'm being told I can't do that. I got an email that.
It's hard to hear you, Bill.
Why?
From Roy. I don't know. Tell me why, Roy. I
Well,
don't know
well,
why I
well,
can't
hold
ask that
on,
question.
hold on. Would that be an approach? Let's set aside the vote of the board and let's do some more. What is out there and find out if this is satisfactory. And in your concept and your view, and I'm a data guy too, but I also want to understand that what is going on, but I don't think we need to dump a big load of work on staff at this point.
I don't think it's a big deal of work. I think it's about 10 minutes worth of work.
Well, then can you and Bob or anybody else spend some time? Roy, do you have a little bit of time to go through all this with?
Yeah, I mean, as a reminder, I'm doing 3 hats right now, so
Yeah, so
time
you're
is
pretty busy.
difficult. I'm gonna be honest with you. I had meetings all day today, and
How about-
15 minutes before this meeting, I was finally
How about-
looking
how
at what's
about
happening
Kevin?
tonight.
Kevin, You're busy too, probably.
Yeah, Bill, I'm not asking to be a part of any special task force here.
Okay.
I'm not sure how I got brought in. I mean,
Okay.
all I
I'll-
was
I'll take
commenting
you out
on
of it.
was
I'll take
this
your-
started from my end specific to one topic last
Okay.
meeting. So
Well,
Can I just,
if-
Bill, can I just say that?
Yeah.
If the board wants staff to get bicycle use on El Paso and they want me to see if that's possible, then vote on that and I'll be happy to move forward trying to see if that's possible. And then I can let the board know if it is or not. And if not, what it would take to get it. It may need that we have to get some kind of study for that. I don't know, but, and then if we can get it, then do you want me to get that data together? Because I already stated, we're not using anything else but smarking, the streetlight data, which may have mobility options to see what people are doing down roads and streets. And T2 and smarking are just vehicles. So that's all we use at this point. No plans to add to that because I think we can get some, mobility information from our streetlight data. So if the board wants me to research streetlight and that capability, I'd be happy to do that. I just want a vote of the board that you agree that's the best use of our time. And if that's the case, then, and also if you want me to pull data from it and bring it, to the next meeting, I'll be happy to do that too, if the board wants us to do that.
Roy, is that going to be satisfactory?
That's the right way to get the answer. Yes, really. Or I don't know if they.
Yeah, turn on.
I
If
can't.
if that's an acceptable direction, then yeah, I would be happy to make that motion and the request would be, can we request from staff to understand our current capability to
No,
measure,
No, I'm going back to what Roy just offered.
right?
Do you support that?
What I heard him say was he would investigate the current capability of our existing systems to make
Right.
measurements of micromobility use.
Right?
Or not just car use, given the current equipment that we have today, with a specific eye to collecting data on El Paso.
Okay,
That's correct. I would research streetlight for that information.
okay. Does this work for you, Carl? Carl,
Yeah,
Oh.
that's fine.
is that fine? Okay, is that a motion, Corey?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second to the motion? Do I hear a second? Anybody? Yes, there's a second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand the motion? Okay, all in favor? Please say yes, raise your hand.
yes,
Those opposed? How many raised? their-
Opposed.
We count.
No.
Luke? Corey, me? And who else?
Joy was
Joy.
in no.
Okay. Pardon? You- The majority wants it. Okay, thank you.
So,
you.
so understood. I will, matter of fact, if you want, Bill, I can find that out. And because we don't have a meeting until January, I'd be happy to send out a blind copy to everyone, our capabilities. We don't necessarily have to wait for a meeting to know that we have capabilities to use this data. And then the next meeting would be, or if we want to vote on that now, if we do you want me to go ahead and grab data for mobility to present to the next meeting? I'll be happy. If we can, I'd be happy to do that. If not, I'm gonna have to figure out, can we expand the current software to allow that and what that would cost?
No, let's find out what we got.
Okay.
Does that work? Motion maker?
If I can get the data, do you want me to go ahead and try to get data?
Yes.
Okay, I think,
So is that in everyone agreement to go ahead and grab the data then, since we're moving along?
Well, I
there?
voted no. and
Yes.
I just go on record. I don't understand what happened here. And in the 3.5 years I've been on this board, this has been probably the oddest moment since I've been on this board. So, yeah, just would like to get that on record. I don't want to make more work for the staff. Roy's got 3 hats. Kevin works his tail off. I didn't mean for this data discussion to go down this road. I just brought it up because of El Paso Boulevard, and it was one thing. I don't understand why we are at the point we are right now. Thank you.
And I have to agree with Bob. I'm not sure what we're doing. I mean, it just seems like
That's my-
staff is pretty booked, and I know Roy is booked, and we're here to support them, and I don't feel this is being supported at all. In fact, it's being contrary. We need data, and we have a question, we can get it. And why do we make it into this thing? So I'm on record at voting no because of that. It's not that I don't like data, it's just that just to give tasks to people doesn't seem to move us forward.
okay, well, Roy made an offer to us, and Roy, I leave it to you, your discretion to limit your time to whatever is reasonable for you that doesn't really impact you significantly.
Okay, well, since
is
it was
that
voted
fair?
5-2,
We
I
voted-
accept
we
the
have a vote
process
5-2.
and I'll go ahead and figure out what we're capable of
And-
doing and get it to the
when-
board line copy.
Right, and when we get it, that's up to you too.
Yeah, I'll be able to let you know on how long it might take but that may be fairly easy because I know what I'm looking for now. So
Okay.
thank you.
Okay,
Say, could I ask a question?
sure.
Bill, I'm sorry. I had my little hand thing here up
Oh, yeah.
for a
Mike,
while,
go
but
ahead, Mike.
I don't, I was just curious. It seems to me like, I guess it's good to know what has happened in the past, but it seems like we're asking for statistics of what has already happened. And I guess my question is, what has the board done to proactively plan for another 1,500 cars a day going down El Paso Boulevard when the city of Colorado Springs opens the Black Canyon trailhead? Have we thought about that?
Well, yeah, and let me talk a little bit about that. I'm familiar with the Black Canyon trailhead. I think you're referring to the quarry, the Black
Mhm.
Canyon quarry.
You
And
bet.
that trailhead is a long ways away from a Colorado Springs point of view. That's dependent upon the TOPS program. It's second priority. The top priority is the bike park on the old quarry up north. And that's what I understand. And
That's not accurate, but the comment is completely off agenda and off topic. It's
right,
really not. part of
Okay.
this discussion.
Well, I'm sorry for asking that, Corey, but the reason I asked it was, I've been riding down El Paso Boulevard on my bicycle for 55 years. So I've seen a lot of changes. You never would have ridden down Colorado Avenue or Manitou Avenue 50 years ago when you had El Paso Boulevard available. But I don't understand why somebody would try to plan for the way things are right now when things around here are changing so quickly. But anyway, that's all I've got for you. And I'm going to have to leave because frankly, I had no idea your guys' meetings were going to
Thank you.
cause me to
Thank
go
you,
to
Mike.
sleep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
okay. Let's move on here. We've spent a lot of time. Kevin, Your report.
Sorry, Bill, new business, if I may. Is that my opportunity to throw
well, we
something out
don't
for
have
the
it on
next
the
meeting,
agenda.
for the next meeting?
Yeah, let's talk.
Oh, that happens then?
Yeah,
Okay,
it happens
gotcha.
then. Let's move on to staff report from Kevin.
I'm assuming everybody had some time to read through the staff report that was provided in the packet. I do want to add a couple mobility items that were not included in this. We did add a bike rack in front of the MAC with 3 of the inverted U's at the request of a C-Click fix. I'm still working with the Metro Board to try to get one installed in the Wichita lot. And I made some progress with the post office, and then the bike rack had been moved. So I'm trying to get in touch with the postmistress again to determine the best location to get that secured there. And then with that, I'm open to any questions.
Questions? Corey?
Kevin, I heard that maybe there was the bike racks installed in front of the MAC were a result of a C-Click fix, or there was a subsequent request to change the orientation of them? Or is that 2 separate requests?
They initially went in from a C-Click fix, and then there was a C-Click fix to adjust the orientation. So both have been completed.
And have been completed.
Yes.
Thank you. And is there, can you give any update about the prospect of additional bike ride, bike share stations?
With the large event we had at the end of October and then the holidays, Veterans Day and Thanksgiving, or this month, I haven't had a chance to get with Jolie. That's on my agenda for this week, early next week, see where we're at with that, because we did have 2 approvals for bike ride hubs.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill,
Okay.
no questions. I just would like to thank Kevin and the staff. I can't believe how busy town has been over the last few weeks. It feels like summer, and I can't imagine just how well you must sleep at night. So thanks for all you do.
I don't sleep as well as my staff because I'm always worrying about something, but I know my staff has, they enjoyed yesterday with the cold and calm day. They really enjoyed yesterday.
I will say this, though, that the staff has stepped up to help us with possibly some plowing in the lots during those bad days. So once again, the parking and mobility department's willing to be a team member, and that's much appreciated from everybody else, which we have a lot of snow things to do too. So they're always on it.
Thank you for all your work, Kevin.
It's our pleasure.
Okay, Public Works report, Roy.
Okay, just some items, just so everyone's aware, the Wichita bathrooms, we're starting that project real soon here. We are bringing in porta potties, but they're being made ADA accessible and fixed. Wichita lot. Yep, there's bathrooms there. We have very few in Manitou. So part of the ADA work, we're gonna help make those ADA accessible and cleaned up. So that's starting, I believe, this week. Wichita parking lot, the one right over here next to us.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Why are we doing that?
Well, we assist the Metro District, and part of that agreement at one point was we help with ADA and improvements, since we have very few bathrooms in town, and we need some bathrooms for folks when they do it. So we went that route. You went to area paving. We did that and that whole area. So that's been very helpful for traffic and everything up in Uinta area. Cannon was repaved and restriped, and got a lot of good comments on that.
Nice job.
Nice. And then some of Midland, we did the intersection of Midland, and that seems to be a good positive thing. Via Chula was also redone in paving. So we're following our plan. We also are working currently with the water department, the streets department, and myself and the city engineer. We're revising we have a plan right now on other roads to do in the future, but every year we have to revise those. And we're also trying to coordinate it with infrastructure like water and sewer underneath the road. So we're kind of doing a little planning of what do we chip seal and what do we actually pave. Chip seal can give us a good 5 years extension. And that way, if we have to dig in there and fix a pipe, it's not expending too much money. So we're looking at ways to do that. Just so you know, the Creek Walk Trail is moving forward as well. Phase 3, I believe, from the pool to the chamber. So that's being worked on. And keep in mind, and I think Carl maybe brought that up, it's a mobility, considered a mobility option. So again, even if we decide a road's not needed, Creek Walk Trail is supposed to be not just for walking, it's supposed to be for mobility. So we're trying to follow that master plan going forward on that, including pavement. And at some point, maybe the board needs to weigh in on paving, because I know that they want to look at other surfaces, but if you really want mobility, I think cement is probably the best way to go for that small section, maybe 10 foot, to help with all different types of mobility and ADA access. So that's just something to think about. It is moving forward though, based on that, all that plan. And then Hiawatha design is coming up soon, and in the phase, they're in the contract approval phase for a mobility hub. And so just so you're aware, that's moving forward. And I know Bill has been on that group, and they're doing a great job. Oh, Carl is too? Yeah. Okay, and Carl, sorry, I haven't been able to make a few of those lately, so I forget that. But Carl and Bill been doing a great job with that, moving forward with Hiawatha. And that's all I have for the public works at this point.
Okay. Quick question. Is street sweeping under Public Works?
It is.
So someday I'd like to learn about, is that really a valuable use of our resources? I mean, I know it's a late night, but as I watch that thing go around Crystal Hills, I wonder, that's not really doing much up there, but anyway.
Yeah, the answer is yes, but we can talk about that one day.
Okay. Corey, real quick.
Is this the point where we would talk about the PPACG report that's in the agenda, or is that going to be coming up later?
Yeah, I think I have another item of the deputy report. So I just finished up the public works. So if Bill wants me to do the deputy city report, I'd be happy
Sure,
to
let's just-
quickly go over this.
And so let me just check.
Yes, sir.
Will you also include an update about the transit study that we had discussed last meeting or the meeting before? Or do you want to do that now? Which hat?
I can do that part of the deputy report. You need the survey?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Bill, do you want me to go on to the deputy report?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so of course, I was asked to do a review of the PPACG study. I'll be honest with you, I don't know, it wasn't the greatest thing I ever read. I did on the last page, there is a document in here, and I don't really need to go probably all through that. I felt there was really little to do with Manitou. But some things were probably a connection with Manitou and everybody else. For example, in transit, improve reliability and frequency of Mountain Metro transit. Oh yeah, I mean, we'd love to see that, sure. Improve the affordability of public transportation. Yeah, we have to pay a certain amount of money, and maybe that can be cheaper, even though they don't have to pay to use it here. They do pay from Colorado Springs to be dropped off here, right? Expand transit service hours, expand transit service in El Paso County, address language barriers on transit service. So all those things do affect us, but not a lot really specific for Manitou Springs. Trail and active transport. Again, maybe Serpentine Drive, Manitou Avenue, I don't know if it's phase 4 and 5 of Creek Walk, maybe it's phase 5, then that may affect the Serpentine area with mobility, but they're talking about some bridge improvements, which we're working on right now. Traffic operation, probably at the lighting at 24 is what we've been in discussions with. And then the Manitou interchange at US 24 by the pool. That is being looked at with URA funding on trying to make mobility safety a big part of that, because as everybody knows, the bike trail kind of ends under the bridge, and it's really a conflict area. So they're looking at that at this point, but we don't know if that's a URA thing or it's in our realm now. So we're trying to work that out. Let's see, emergency management. That's always something being looked at, cell coverage, vulnerable populations, that's all as part of their program to look at in El Paso County and Teller. Technology and communication, again, broadband. We are actually working towards having our own broadband in Manitou, and that's being worked on right now with funding we already had for a few years, and they already had a task force for that. So we're starting to make some movement with that. Takes time. EV charging infrastructure is something that we're looking at for Hiawatha. Also at the pool, we can upgrade some of those for a very cheap amount. And that's maybe something I bring to the board soon on what that would mean. And do they want to help fund that to upgrade those chargers over there, which might be a great idea because they're like first, what do you call it? First generation, maybe. So, and then let's see, anything else with that? Manitou Springs, I did that. And that was about it. So not a lot about Manitou on that from my perspective. And Bill, I don't know if you have any input.
Yeah, well, I was disappointed in not your report, but in what they provided us, because there was very little that really pertained to us directly. And I think that's unfortunate. And we have a PPACG. Yeah, we have a PPACG rep, I believe, from council. And I think we need to take some feedback back to PPACG and say, hey, just as good as you're going to get, we're going to get. Come on, guys. Yeah, Corey.
So process question, who is our PPACG rep that would, or put another way, did Manitou participate or try to participate in the process that led to this study?
I believe that the mayor is part of that group. And I would have to double check. I think they're part of like the executive group and he goes to those meetings once a month. And then there's a CAC board, which is a civilian board. And then there's a TAC, which is a city like engineers where Dole is actually chairing that right now. So there's some input, but how much when this was decided, I'm not sure, Corey, because this has probably been decided a few years ago before they actually, and then the study was presented this year. So my guess it was probably even 3 or 4 years ago or when they started this study.
Do you have any idea is this the kind of study that that we ought to adopt or endorse in some way? And kind of where I'm getting at is, if PPACG, they've identified some priorities. I see some things on here that I think could help Manitou. Would it make sense for us to draw out the ones that we think might be important and try to find ways that we could leverage regional dollars or federal dollars or any other kind of thing like that? And that's sort of why I wondered if we should read through this at our retreat and find out if any of these are priorities that we think are priorities, but just not really sure how it fits in with what we do.
Well, we can talk about it during the retreat, but basically the tax issue that passed, the extension of PPRTA had some projects in it. Did you see those? Yes. Okay.
It's got
But
some
let's-
projects, but this is different from the PPRTA
I
projects.
understand that, Corey. But let's talk about it during the retreat.
Or should we? I'd ask Roy's opinion. Like, should we consider this at our retreat?
Again, I'm not opposed to reading any of these studies and bringing information to that you think is valuable to that meeting. And you kind of have to make that decision, bring it to the board and see if they agree. And then I'm totally okay. I think, as you said, you found some things that might support some of our goals. And I think that would be great to bring it to that meeting, you bet. So I would encourage the whole board to kind of glance through that in more detail if you have time. And if there's interest to bring that to the meeting because it is part of our goals, then please do. Makes sense to me.
Okay, good. City Council Liaison Report, Natalie. Are you still?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. Yeah, I don't have a ton because we haven't met the last few weeks as council, which is actually nice. But we do also have a council retreat coming up. We haven't scheduled anything yet, but I believe it will happen after you all have your retreat. So that'll be really helpful for me to have some information to share. And then we will be, doing the final reading of the council of the budget. And I'm not anticipating any changes, for what you've requested. So that's all I got.
Anything specific that you want to pass on to our board?
Only just that in our conversations casually, mobility has come up quite a bit. And so I do anticipate that council we'll be spending some time discussing it during the retreat. So.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to, we don't have any old business.
Mr. Chair, there was a question about, it was related to the deputy city admin report related to that transit survey.
Yes, that was asked as well during that report. So we have, I believe, because I just came off last week off. So I believe we have some questions ready for that we're reviewing from the group that's setting those up, professionals who set up the questions. And then we'll be able to get that out and have that survey information probably before the end of the year, or maybe January, to be able to show you what they want transit service. The good news too, where I think I said maybe it was 20,000, we ended up, I believe it was under 8,000 or $8,000. So it really was a lot cheaper than we initially thought it would be. So that for those that were concerned on the cost, it's really, so I appreciate the trust and that we would get the best price, and it actually ended up being pretty cheap for those type of things. So we're moving, that's all we have right now, but we should have information by end of the year or early next year to present on transportation and what the community is looking for, so it can help us in that decision making.
Okay, thank you, Roy.
And would it be valuable for this board to give any feedback on the questions that are going to be part of that transit study?
Let me think about that. I'll talk to the professionals who run those, like you mentioned, when it comes to surveys, they have specific ways they do that. So let me just check. And if they think that's a good idea, you bet I'll send it out and just get, individually. We won't do it as a group on email. We'll copy out, and then you can give me your personal response on anything, and then I can send it to them as well. I have no problem as long as they're okay with keeping that integrity of the survey intact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no old business, board correspondence. Now's your
Don't we
chance.
have old business related to the planning changes that we talked about last week?
Well, it's not on the agenda, Corey.
So where would that appear? Because we were told last month that we could provide feedback based on the design on the code changes, I think.
Yeah, well, we did, you're talking about the planning code.
Yeah,
right?
we had a presentation last month and we
Right.
said, should we provide input? And we were told
but
yes.
The way we left it, I thought, was as individual members of the community, we can provide input on that code.
I thought we were
You're saying that we
thought we were
should,
to
as
bring
a
it
board,
back here to the
provide
board.
that. I had the impression that we were endorsing the inputs that we were getting from the presentation.
We did not endorse it. We tabled it. We did not make a recommendation last month.
No, we didn't make a recommendation, but as individual members of the community, we can tackle that. If you want to, well, the dates, I think we're running up against some dates for the adoption or start.
Yes, that's going to be completed, I believe, by January. My understanding, and I can confirm this, but my understanding is that as citizens, you can attend those meetings and make your recommendations at that time. None of the boards are given recommendations as a board. You're just going to do that as a community member separately. They were just giving you their what they're working on, and at that meeting, you gave some immediate feedback. I don't know if that could be used or not, but I think it's from just an individual standpoint, but I can verify. I'm pretty sure that's what I was told though when we had that meeting set
Well,
up.
that's my understanding.
Okay, and Kevin may have more insight to that. Kevin, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I did speak with Hannah. Anybody as a citizen, anything like that is more than welcome to reach out to Hannah via email, get her your thoughts, and she will make sure it gets back to the consultants.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Okay, board correspondence.
Carl has his hand up.
Yeah. Oh, Carl's gonna say.
Carl,
Yeah. Carl?
maybe it's,
Thanks. So I just wanted to put a quick plug in, mark your calendars, Monday, February 6th. There's the largest mobility conference in Colorado being held in Denver. It's called Moving People Forward, and it's organized by Bicycle Colorado. I sent information to staff, And I would encourage, council and board members, right? We're supposed to be the mobility and parking board. Here's an opportunity to potentially talk to other folks in other communities and hear kind of some new approaches to potentially solving problems that we're facing. So if you're interested, let me know, or I guess you could reach out to Roy or Kevin for information. But yeah, February 6th.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go ahead and forward that information, Carl, to the group. I know they don't have all the details yet on pricing and such, but what you sent me, I'll go ahead and get that out there. Kevin, unless you beat me to the punch, we'll get it to the board so they can look at it. I do think it's awesome as a whole mobility meeting, to talk about that. It can definitely sounds like it would be valuable if anyone can make it.
Right. And if we can't make it, we're relying on you to bring back all sorts of good information on mobility for us. Is that fair? Okay, great. Okay, other,
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And Shemi, I feel badly that you, I invited you and this has been a long day. But I think we're near the end. I just wanted to thank you. I just wanted to thank you for coming. As he said, I did attend the last meeting. And I thought it was important to try and perhaps have representation. I heard you say during the meeting, you weren't even sure if we met, which of course I told you we meet every month. And I think there's no secret in the room. I don't understand why we have this situation in this town. And we had a great illustration tonight where one group could make a decision that would be completely contrary to the city. I don't know all the background, although I don't know Larry, but he wanted to take me back to my senior year in high school and talk about the mid 80s, about what was going on. I just don't get it. And I just want to continue to push this issue. I know it's a government, blah, 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 and there's all these different hoops, but it is ridiculous that we have this setup in this city. And I'm just here to say, I want to change it. I don't know how it changes. I don't know why we don't meet together. I don't know, you guys don't clearly know anything about what we do based on what I heard in that last meeting. I don't know what you do, although I'm educating myself on a daily basis. It just drives me crazy. So I don't know if this is correspondence other than, and if I'm the only one in the room that feels this way, please tell me privately or in public, because maybe I am the only one that cares. But I'm about efficiency, and I can't stand the fact that we sit in here and devote 2 hours of our time as volunteers, and there's another group that does something on their own that's contrary to what we do. I'm also very disappointed that the education that we have in this group, thanks to Roy, thanks to Kevin and others, I'm not sure that education, and I could be wrong, Shemi, reaches the Metro Board. The Metro Board strikes me as a group of people that meet, and it's very friendly, and it's a limited discussion, and it's not as professional as this board in terms of the agenda that I witnessed. I just don't get it. And I really believe if the residents in this city knew that we had this, and nobody knows this, come on, nobody knows that we have this odd two-system parking and mobility setup. And I shouldn't say nobody, very few people. It just drives me crazy. And it really questions, why do I volunteer my time to this city when we have another group that can set their own rules? So Shemi, I'd love to try and bridge this gap. And again, I don't know all the particulars, and I may come across as an idiot because there's something behind the scenes that I should know. But as a commonsensical person, it's crazy that we have this system in this town, and that we could decide to have free parking on Main Street, and you could charge $20 an hour. And there's nothing we can do about that from what I can tell. So don't know where I'm going with this. I would like to get this on agendas. I would like to push this. I would like to bring Metro in. Why do we don't meet together? I don't get it. Rolf, I know you said you don't like to meet at night, and that's okay. Then we have to find a way to do something differently. I don't even know if there's a conflict of interest to having a person serving on this board and on Metro. And I do wonder that. So again, I'm just not sure why we have this system. So I'd like to just throw it out there. I'm not looking for comments unless you want to give them to me. The second point I want to bring up, why do we have 2 hours free parking on Lower Ruxton? I think actually the gentleman that was on the call was the impetus behind that. No, it wasn't him. I don't get why we have two.
There's no free parking. It's a 2 hour maximum paid parking. and
Oh,
you
it's
gotta-
2 hour maximum.
Yep. Once a
Okay,
day.
why do we have that there? It's the only place in town, right?
That was an ordinance written, one to assist the businesses because there's,
Thank you, Shemmy.
night Jimmy, there were
It's just what businesses? The ones that are right in front.
right there.
The
a
antique
dozen or
store.
So businesses right there and
Yeah.
we had 9 spaces, fire requested a fire lane, so now we have 8. It's to help the turnover right there. As Luke had just mentioned, incliners try to park there. We have a specific ordinance, 2 hours
Okay.
per vehicle per 24 hours.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need on that. But again, I just, you guys know me, you know, I'm passionate about very few things in life, but I'm passionate about this 2-system deal that we have here. I just think it's crazy and I want to change it and I'll do whatever I can. Thank you.
If I may respectfully respond to that, I'm not sure that you meant to do it, Bob, but I think I heard potentially I want to say accusation of a conflict of interest.
Oh, no, I
and-
brought it up for sure. I think there's a potential that there's not an accusation. I think there's potential for conflict of interest.
Okay, well, I guess I want to say, I think that's a serious allegation and I think it has gravity. And if you are concerned about a conflict of interest on the board, then I think we ought to address it directly.
It's not the board. First of all, I don't think it's as serious as you're making it out to be. I think it's pretty commonsensical that if you have one person that makes the decision for 2 parking lots, it actually does make a decision versus recommendation for the rest of the city. Very similar to having a bus that has 6 passengers that we pay $100,000 so somebody
Okay,
downtown
okay,
can
okay.
use that. Well,
De-escalate.
Corey, don't come across and say that was, I forgot the verbiage that you used
What
because
I
I
said
reject
is-
that.
What I'm saying is, I think it's a serious allegation. If
I
you
don't think
feel
it's a serious allegation.
to say there's a conflict of interest.
Hell, no, there's not a serious allegation to say there because of potential conflict of interest.
We need to talk about this, Bill. We need to talk about this, Bill.
Not now, it's not in the agenda, and I think Bob has a point, so I think we should move to adjournment, Bill. This is not something.
Yeah,
on-
that's a valid point. So I think we need to finish the correspondence. If this needs to be an item on the next agenda or whatever, then fine. And I can also just, look at if there's any conflict of interest from a city administrative perspective, because we've dealt with this with other boards, not necessarily in a board meeting. So I'll look into if there's any reason why this would be a conflict. My guess, it probably ends up not being a conflict of interest just based on past experience, but I would double check that. But if it's something we need to discuss, then I think we just bring it to a board meeting in February because we can't do it in January. We have plans. In the meantime, he's been a board member for a while now. And I think the idea was having Metro, that was the connection to the Metro district. If that's, I believe the reason why we wanted someone on the board for that. So.
Well, then how come I can't be on, because I don't live in the Metro District, I can't be on their board. In fact, somebody on that last
Okay.
board meeting I was at criticized or made the comment, I should say, that I'm a business owner, but I don't live in Manitou and I can't serve on your board.
Okay.
I mean,
That's, I get that, Bob. So maybe it needs to be a discussion in February. So, but maybe we just need to move on correspondence from there. And I understand. I think we
Look,
heard
the
you.
larger issue is why do we have this system and am I the only one that thinks it's crazy? I don't hear comments from anybody. It feels like it's one of these under the cover, strange things that we have in this city. And if you're going to charge $20 to park in Wichita and we're going to charge $10 and or whatever, and we have inconsistency, we look like fools as a city.
So we just need to bring that on an agenda item. So it sounds like Bill will talk about if that's a February agenda item to discuss. It may be important to discuss on cooperation between the Metro District and this board.
Yeah,
so
well,
that
I don't
things
want to hear
work.
Larry tell me that businesses come before residents, which is what he implied at the last meet at the Metro meeting I was at. I don't want to hear that from Larry. I don't even know who Larry is. Does he, you told me he owns the business that's not even in the Metro District.
Yeah,
Well, that's not in the Metro District.
yeah, understood. So maybe we just
All right,
continue on.
I apologize,
Okay.
everyone, but
Do you have any other correspondence, Bill? Okay. Yeah.
Better understand it, whether, thank you. I support looking into those two systems to better understand it. And if we can bring them together, I'm all on board with that. I don't know the history of those two groups. I'd love to know the history of those two groups. I'm sure there's reasons for the separation of the two entities and them not being together already. I want to learn all about it. And I think that's more than just an agenda item. I think I'm a big advocate for meetings. I know a lot of people aren't, especially folks that have other things to do with their time. But at the end of the day, this deserves a really heartfelt discussion with both groups all together and probably lawyers. To be honest, if we want to bring them together, there's a long history and understanding there. And I think it would be beneficial for everybody to be on the same page. So I thank you, Bob, for bringing this to everybody's attention so passionately because it's important.
Anyway, thanks. Okay, well, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, Rolf.
I was appointed to this board by the city council and I can't be removed just by this board, actually. It would have to be something that would have to go through city council. I went before the meeting and I was appointed by them. So my being on this board has nothing to do with this board. They cannot remove me or add me or anything like that. Secondly, the Metropolitan Board, the Metropolitan District is like Crystal Park. Crystal Park doesn't let me go into Crystal Park. I have no way to get into Crystal Park. I've lived here for 55 years. I've never actually been to Crystal Park. I cannot go to Crystal Park. I have nothing to do with Crystal Park. The Manitou Metropolitan District is its own entity also, just like Crystal Park is. Nothing to do with it. Any part of Manitou could actually become a metropolitan district.
I don't live in Crystal
So
Park.
I know, I didn't say that. You can't go to Crystal Park though. Crystal Park is part of Manitou. You can't go, it's a separate, let me just finish.
I know, but real quick, this would be an agenda item. We're getting way off into the weeds.
We're out in the
And we
weeds.
really
folks.
need to back off on this now. And I'm sorry you didn't get to speak as long, but I think we just probably need to bring this to a meeting to talk
Well-
about what Metro District's all about. How do we work it out with maps and the whys? I think we just need to do that in February because it's been this long. 2 more months won't be a big deal. And just do it the right way. Because right now we're going down a non-agenda item and we're just going too far into it. So I'm going to say we stop that part now. And if you have any other correspondence, we do that, then Joy and Carl, and we just move on tonight. And otherwise a really good meeting. It's been good. So Rolf, do you have anything other correspondence at all tonight? Okay, thank you.
No, Roy, thank you.
Okay, Joy, did you have something?
No, thank you.
Carl.
Bill, I move that we adjourn for the evening.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it.
Seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
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 Okay, we're adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening, everybody.
Okay, gentlemen, we gotta keep the noise